With Trey Hendrickson available for trade, I think the Buffalo Bills and the Green Bay Packers would be true Super Bowl contenders if they made the move. We'll break it down on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Lauren Cox. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about some quarterback decisions that are getting nearer and nearer with the Colts and the Saints. We're going to talk about some big quarterback news that came out on Monday with Matthew Stafford back at Los Angeles Rams practice and Joe Flacco named the starter in Cleveland. But we got to start with more Trey Hendrickson trade conversation because there are a lot of teams out there that make sense. But would a Trey Hendrickson move make any of these teams a true Super Bowl threat? We'll go over each of the top options. Before we do, though, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen each and every day, and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Lauren, it seems like the Buffalo Bills are a very, very popular Trey Hendrickson destination, and I have reservations about whether the Bengals would ever make that trade to the Bills. I mean, whether they make a trade with Trey Hendrickson or not is already unlikely to see him moved, but the Bills definitely helping out a big rival there in the AFC. It makes it a little less likely than it already is. But if Trey Hendrickson did get traded to the Buffalo Bills, let's say they gave up, one of their starting edge rushers and a first-round pick or a second-round pick is probably where things seem to be right now. Do you think that that makes Buffalo significantly better to the point where maybe you'd have them as like a Super Bowl favorite?
I wouldn't say Super Bowl favorite, but it definitely is a big boost, right? I mean, you add that kind of caliber of a pass rush. I think they're hoping Joey Bosa can be some smaller version of that.
Exactly.
Hoping for older edge rushers to come in and be dominant isn't always fruitful in that way. But to me, like that feels like a team that's just the right amount of desperate, where it's like we keep hitting this Patrick Mahomes wall. And can we go all in and just give us like that one thing to boost us over the top? Like I like their defensive line depth that they have, but the opportunity to add this caliber of a player doesn't come along very often. So like it's tricky because I don't think it's making a weakness into a strength. It's just taking a decent part of the team and making it even stronger. And that might be enough for that, one game difference in the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs.
Literally, Lauren, that is my 100% argument. Fully agree. The Bills need someone to make that play. The defense has been good, but they haven't really been able to make that big play for Buffalo throughout the stretch. And you're right, they've been doing the same thing over and over and just hoping for development. We add a piece here, and this is a chance to really get somebody who not only is going to be good, at least for the next couple of years, but they can make that big superstar play for you. And, you get lucky enough to get a Joey Bosa healthy, and you got those two guys as your edge rushers. Those are guys who will make plays if they're healthy in the big moments. They'll find a way to do it. So I actually would say that maybe not Super Bowl favorite overall, but if Buffalo made that trade, I would consider them the favorite in the AFC going forward. Now, a team that is a little bit more complicated is the Green Bay Packers, and whether or not it makes them Super Bowl contenders or not, we'll discuss, but my guy Peter Bukowski from Locked On Packers thinks that they should certainly consider the move.
No, the Packers don't do this. If you think Trey Hendrickson has 3 years, 2 to 3 years of prime play left, every contract, you give him $40 million a year, and apparently he doesn't need $40 million. You give him 30, 35, he might be happy. But if you think he's got 3 years, 2 to 3 years of prime play left, all these contracts are 2 to 3 years anyway. Like it does seem in some ways antithetical. The Packers are obsessed with the idea of not giving guaranteed money beyond the first year. All their contracts are 2 years and we'll see. And yet they are absolute sticklers for age. They want to bring in young players. They want the guys in free agency that are 25, 26 years old. presumably because they want guys in the prime of their careers. But these contracts are 2 years. 2 years, and then we'll see. If Myles Garrett can get $40 million and TJ Watt can get $40 million and Micah Parsons is going to get $40 million, he might get 45 at this rate. Those guys are older than Trey Hendrickson. Micah's not, but the other two guys I mentioned are. So what are we talking about here?
I'm with Peter. I think this is exactly what the Packers need to do. It's for different reasons than the Bills, but I think the Green Bay Packers need some veteran stars that they can count on in big moments. I don't think that they have enough of that on their team. That's why we see the constant penalty issues and they make big mistakes in big moments. And we always tout they're the youngest roster in the NFL. But this is the type of move that doesn't keep the roster young. It doesn't fit their profile, but Trey Hendrickson is worth it. He's the type of player you make this move for. And I personally have Green Bay as the favorite in the NFC North this year. I'm not as high on the Lions as the general public because of losing the coordinators. I think this move, maybe not the favorite in the NFC because Philadelphia is still there, but I would have Green Bay as probably my second most likely team to make a Super Bowl run in the NFC.
Yeah, it feels to me like it obviously would be a huge boost, but I have enough like other little questions that like Hendrickson doesn't solve all the question marks around Green Bay. And that doesn't mean don't make the deal, right? Like, of course, one trade is not going to fix all of your problems. And if that's enough of a boost to kind of help overshadow some of those other things, then that's fine. But I still need to see like those receivers mature and consistently catch passes and Jordan Love maintain a higher level of consistency. And that offensive line is still piecing together a little bit here and there. But having a star pass rusher to go opposite Rashawn Gary and to make Lucas Van Ness less of a top option for them and to kind of just push everyone down the depth chart a little bit can really have some ripple effects that would be great for Jeff Hafley's defense as their secondary is trying to still absorb the loss of Jair Alexander, and better pass rush can make those cornerbacks' jobs a little easier too.
And you know what? To be honest with you, I'm looking at the Packers, and if the Bengals want a defensive player back, that's why I like the Bills and the Packers as options because they actually can give something back. Think about a guy like Rashawn Gary, who's a pretty good player. His deal isn't super cheap or anything like that, but at the same time, it's cheaper than what you're going to get with Trey Hendrickson. I'm not sure how many years of guaranteed money are left, but you could have a little bit more control and not have to walk right into a contract negotiation, which is obviously what they want to avoid. So I think with it being NFC, with it being someone who can send a piece back, I think that makes a ton of sense. Is there any other team out there, whether they'll become a Super Bowl threat or not, that you think makes sense for Trey Hendrickson?
People have floated out a lot the Detroit Lions as sort of going all in there, knowing that, I mean, it's tricky because they're going to have to pay Aiden Hutchinson big bucks really soon. And I don't think you can afford to give Hendrickson and Hutchinson, those are hard to say, Hendrickson and Hutchinson. Both
maybe that's why it works, though.
But, they really need that, like, second pass rusher or really like second defensive star really to kind of boost that group. It's been Hutchinson and I mean their other starter right now is supposed to be Marcus Davenport, who hasn't been able to stay healthy, or they got a second round pick in Josh Pascal. But like to me, like that's a defense where it's like if you're trying to go all in and say, hey, we don't have much more time in our Super Bowl window, we'll figure out the money stuff later with these two guys, and maybe it ends up being a shorter term rental anyway for one of them, or maybe you push back the Hutchinson stuff a little bit, or backload that contract more. However you have to do it, just kind of say, hey, we can feel the momentum maybe slipping away a little bit because you lost the coordinator. So let's make that splash move that gets everybody really excited about the Lions again.
I agree with that momentum point 100%. They need something to boost them into the season. And I agree. If you have Aiden Hutchinson on one side and you have Trey Hendrickson on the other side, and then you got a guy like Kirby Joseph in the back end who could just roam all over the place and take advantage and get interceptions, that's a great trio to build around on the defense for the Lions. But you're right. They're trying to pay Aiden Hutchinson themselves. There are some rumors that they're trying to get that done this offseason. I don't know if that'll happen, but it would be hard to get both of those done at the same time. But it does make sense.
Can I throw in one more team as an next transition here? What about a young defensive line like the Los Angeles Rams with an old quarterback who's approaching the end of his career? Maybe you feel like he got one or maybe two more years of Stafford. Do you go all in and say, hey, we like our young defensive line. Let's add this guy to put us over the top in our division?
Hey, that's a Los Angeles Rams move right there. It would be like the defensive equivalent of a Matthew Stafford. So that could make a lot of sense. But, Lauren, thank you. Perfect segue. Speaking of the Los Angeles Rams and Matthew Stafford was back at practice on Tuesday, and that's or Monday, and that's a big deal for the Los Angeles Rams. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Look, folks, big announcement. August the 26th will officially be FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. So you want to take a flyer on the MVP race and go with maybe Caleb Williams, who looked excellent in his preseason game against the Bills. Maybe you want to crown your champion early in August. Say the Bills do trade for Trey Hendrickson. I would throw some cash there. Maybe parlay some division winner dark horses. Make sure that you visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. All right, Lauren, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about some trade options for Trey Hendrickson and what it would do for those teams. I think there are a couple teams that it makes a ton of sense for both sides, but obviously Hendrickson getting moved still not as likely as him staying put. But with that being said, we didn't know how likely it would be that Matthew Stafford would get back on the field soon for the Los Angeles Rams. He had a workout on Saturday, didn't participate in that workout. Sean McVay said we'd have some news on Monday. Well, the news on Monday is that Matthew Stafford is back with the Rams. Lauren, my take when this kind of started bubbling up a couple of weeks ago was that even if Stafford were to miss a couple of weeks at the beginning of the season, I believe so much in the infrastructure of the Rams and what they can be once he returned that I wasn't even worried about it. But now he's back out on the practice field, and with a couple of weeks left until week 1 kicks off, if you're the Rams, unless you know something behind the scenes, you got to feel pretty confident that he's going to be able to be ready to go for week 1.
Yeah, evidently that rejuvenation tank trailer magic worked pretty well. I don't know. But yeah, this to me, like, it was weird. It's been such a weird situation all along, where it's like they insist that everything's fine, but then they were being really mysterious about whether he was even at the game over the weekend. And usually like the more mysterious a team is being about it, the more worried you should be, because even when they are worried about stuff, usually they'll still kind of lie to you and say, oh no, everything's fine, he'll be good to go, even if behind the scenes they're actually secretly panicking. And so the fact that they weren't even fully, putting the fake smile on their face and saying, no, everything's fine, that's when it's like, uh-oh, this could be real serious here. But so it's just been kind of a strange approach to how they've handled this, because now it's like, oh, he's back to practice and not everything's fine, but everything is good enough, and now nothing to worry about. All that stuff we had you worried about before, that was nothing. So maybe they legitimately didn't know, but I find it a little hard to believe in the modern age of sports science.
Well, it just goes to show that, sometimes coaches who play things closer to the vest ultimately are doing the right thing. McVay is known to be very transparent about injuries, and that kind of put him in a bind. He was saying, we expect Matt to be back. We think Matt's going to work out on Saturday. And when these things don't happen, it's like that ratchets up the intensity on the player and on the situation completely. Now, on the other side of it, Lauren, obviously, we're people in the media. I want max transparency from my coach and my organization, and, everything I can know, I'd like to know. Let's just be honest here. But this does go to show that sometimes it can increase the panic if you're overly honest, and sometimes these guys don't know. You can't know how a 36-year-old, 37-year-old Matthew Stafford's back is going to respond day to day, and like you're trying to give answers to be transparent, but they just end up biting you because you don't know for certain. So I hate to argue against my own philosophy, but I guess this does go to show why some coaches do play this a little bit more quietly and a little less certainly.
Well, it's like anybody listening to this over the age of like 30 knows exactly what it's like with the back. And, you wake up some days and you're great to go to practice and do your regular full stuff. And the next day you wake up and you slept on it slightly wrong. And oh my God, you're bedridden for the rest of that day. So I can only imagine, the bulging disc that Stafford's working with here just feels like one of those patience and time and those cortisone shots and some combination of letting him rest and giving him some painkillers when they need it. And he's fought through this for years now. I think we'll know that week 1 in regular season, he's going to push through it as best he possibly can.
And, I'll be honest, to take it to where it has to go to, we're talking about readiness for week 1. At some point, though, you are worried about, how long he can hold up. because you're right, he's been dealing with it, he's been managing it, but it seems like it's been worse this year than it's been years before. It's been more of a problem for him. So you just wonder, yeah, it's good news for the Rams. They get him back at practice. I want to see Matthew Stafford out there with the Rams. I don't want to see Jimmy G, and I'd rather see Stetson Bennett, if I'm honest with you. He lit it up out there in preseason week 2. But you do got to wonder, will Stafford be able to hold up at this point? And you don't know a lot of people. I think, Lauren, you might have been the first person to say this to me. You don't know a lot of people who said they used to have a bad back. So how much better can this possibly get for Stafford? It does make you wonder about their longevity as a team this year with what he's going through.
It just feels like any one hit could just, that
yes.
can just slip or whatever. And it's like, even if you load them up with the painkillers and stuff, at some point, the damage just becomes too much to withstand. It becomes a functional thing and not just a pain thing if you keep sort of pushing it and hitting it. So that's going to be one of those where if I'm a Rams fan, like, I want that time to throw to be sped up. And anytime there's any kind of hit on the quarterback, I'm holding my breath until he pops up and is ready to go. And it very much feels like we're talking about a senior citizen here. He's not even like the Tua thing. It's just like, no, this old guy, his back is in rough shape. And somehow yet Aaron Rodgers in his early 40s is out there and it doesn't have quite the same concerns.
Yeah, hey, you know what, though? I saw a little video last week of Rodgers with one of his legs wrapped pretty good, and it's like, Father Time is undefeated after all, unless you're LeBron James, I guess, who just keeps on going. But speaking of quarterback clarity and pain, the Cleveland Browns got a little bit of quarterback clarity, but it may be painful depending on how you look at things. Joe Flacco was announced as the starter for the Cleveland Browns. This is the conservative decision. This was the expected decision. Spencer German from Locked On Browns was my special co-host yesterday's show, and he was basically saying, like, Joe Flacco lit it up at one of the joint practices. He would be shocked if he wasn't the starter. So this was expected. But I got to be honest with you, Lauren. I've been banging this drum since the draft. I'm going to keep doing it. Shedeur Sanders is the guy who makes the most sense for the Browns. He gives them the most upside long-term while also giving them the ability to maybe not eke out a couple of wins that veteran Joe Flacco might eke out. There's just no upside with Joe Flacco. Seems like a silly thing to be playing him. Hopefully, eventually, even if it's Dylan Gabriel, hopefully, eventually, we get away from Joe Flacco and this Browns team, and we can get to one of these young quarterbacks. And I think that's best for the Browns, too.
Yeah, but I can see if I'm Kevin Stefanski and I'm feeling like my seat is hot, and I just need like something consistent under center that I know what I'm going to get here. Like there's a certain devil you know versus devil you don't dynamic here of like, yes, Joe Flacco is not, he's not going to make the Pro Bowl or anything, but you know what you're going to get from him game in and game out. And you feel like, well, they've got some young weapons that you like. I mean, not a top 10 group in the NFL by any means, but like, right. If you feel like, okay, like Jerry Jeudy can make some plays, Cedric Tillman, like get the ball in their hands, Deontay Johnson, maybe you can piece together enough of an offense here to at least be like, hey, I'm Kevin Stefanski. I'm the offensive guy. Remember me, I can still run an offense at a high level with a quarterback that I know can execute what I'm going to ask of him, as opposed to a rookie who might have certainly a higher ceiling for sure, but you don't know exactly what you're going to get right out of the gate.
And it's the thing I've been talking about with Brian Dable where, keep that in your back pocket. Keep one of the young quarterbacks in your back pocket. You're sucking at the end of the year. You got a month of the season left. Throw one of them young guys out there. Let them have some moments. And then tell the organization, hey, we got our quarterback now. Just let me have more time with him. And then you might get another season. And that's job security as well. But speaking of job security, 2 quarterback battles that are still ongoing in the NFL right now, New Orleans, Indianapolis. We're going to get an update on both of those. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute you want to head to the ball game with your friends and family? Maybe it's game day. You suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can get more food, drinks, merch, maybe invite a bigger group. Game Time makes it all possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices actually drop the closer that you get to first pitch. I love the incredible last-minute deals, clear seat view, lowest price guarantee. Game Time really does have the best features in the industry, and that's why I buy all of my tickets on Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Lauren, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. Talked about some Trey Hendrickson stuff. Talked about Stafford and Flacco being back in certain positions, I guess, however you want to play it. But there are two quarterback decisions that, as of this recording, I should say, we don't have an answer to. One in Indianapolis, one in New Orleans. We'll go over the weekend update with those. Before we do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen today. NFL fantasy draft season is here, so make your second listen Locked On Fantasy Football with hosts Vinny Iyer and Michelle Majuk, the Data Queen, who comes on Thursday here on Locked On NFL. Make sure that you listen every day so that you can be prepared for your fantasy draft, become the most informed manager, so you can take home your league's trophy this season. Find Locked On Fantasy Football on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. The Indianapolis Colts quarterback battle is complicated. I've seen some who follow the team consistently who think Anthony Richardson is going to be the starter. I've seen some who say, regardless of what happened, they still think that Daniel Jones is going to be the starter. All I know for certain is, if I'm the Colts and they're even close to equal, I'm going to go with Anthony Richardson. And it sounds like, based on what happened over the preseason, that might be the case.
Indianapolis Colts quarterback Anthony Richardson puts together a really solid showing in preseason game 2. Hello, everyone. This is Zach Hicks, your resident film nerd of HorseshoeHuddle.com and the Locked On Colts podcast. And yeah, Anthony Richardson had a pretty solid showing in preseason game 2. Came out the gates firing, 5 of 6 on the first drive, and led the only touchdown drive of the preseason between the two Colts starting quarterbacks in this competition. And finished the day 6 of 11 with 74 yards. Arguably the biggest play of the day for Richardson is one that didn't count, as he fired a 38-yard dot to Anthony Gould down the sideline. That was sadly called back due to an offsides on A.D. Mitchell. So Anthony Richardson, on that first drive, we got the short passes, we got all the things you're looking for from the young quarterback in terms of his growth, and then we got the flash on that third drive that was unfortunately called back due to penalties. So for my money, I think Richardson kind of pulled ahead in this one, bouncing back from a poor showing against Baltimore, but we'll cover this more on the Colts Squad show coming up right after the game.
This is what you want to hear if you're a Colts fan, because at the end of the day, with either of these quarterbacks, I don't think the Colts can do anything serious, so you'd rather at least get one more opportunity to see the potential of Anthony Richardson, because you know that Daniel Jones, even if it gets you a win or two more, he's not going to be your future franchise. So I think the Colts, who you could argue a similar spot to the Browns if you want to go, like the job security thing. But I just think the difference between Flacco and a rookie is certainly not the same as Richardson and Jones. So for that reason, I definitely would say they got to go with Anthony Richardson here.
Yeah, it really just stands out to me. Like you watch both these quarterbacks in the preseason, they both miss throws sometimes, right? Like they both have inaccuracies, but then you watch like Daniel Jones's best throws are like, oh, it's okay, it's fine. And you watch Anthony Richardson's best throws and you're like, whoa, that guy, that's an NFL quarterback. So like if they're both going to be, subpar in their own ways, and like it'd be different if Daniel Jones was like, this super accurate, just check down Charlie Boring quarterback. Like if this was the traditional Alex Smith sort of moniker, right? Then it's like, okay, you got the safe option or the wild option. But for me, like Daniel Jones isn't that much safer of an option. Like he a little bit for sure, and like perhaps more durable. But like I don't think it's just like, oh wow, this is really the devil we know. Like there's still a lot of like, we don't know how consistent Daniel Jones is even going to be. So if both of them are inconsistent, give me the guy who can hit those moonshots that can really be the difference between winning and losing. Like one of those big explosive plays can absolutely flip an entire game. And I don't know that Daniel Jones quite has that capability. So unless the Colts were more loaded at receiver and you just felt like, okay, maybe we can dink and dunk our way a little bit more. But for me, like they're not a good enough football team to just rest on Daniel Jones. You kind of got to swing for the fences with Richardson.
Yeah, if they want to do anything special this year, it'll be because Anthony Richardson finally pops. Like it finally clicks. That's what would drive the Colts to having like a division-winning special season that no one expected. And you're not getting that with Daniel Jones. We know enough there. So on the other side, the New Orleans Saints. Both of their quarterbacks have been going back and forth, and it was Spencer Rattler who led a game-winning drive in the preseason matchup that my guy Ross Jackson, the mastermind, discussed.
Number one, I think the biggest thing we got to talk about here is Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler did everything that he needed to do to make sure that there was no one ready to close the book on the quarterback competition, leading that 2-minute drive at the end. I think that the Saints are going to want to see a third game. They'll kind of chalk up each of these first two preseason games 1-1 to Shuck and Rattler in that order. But I think you're probably going to see a third game here. But I just thought that the late game heroics from Spencer Rattler was one of those things that he absolutely needed to show, and did a really good job showing that.
Shuck had a great game a couple of weeks ago, kind of showed everything that he shows. Spencer Rattler responds here, though. Again, 18 for 24, 199, has the touchdown and interception. I personally think Spencer Rattler is the better player. I'm not that high on Tyler Shuck. But if you're the Saints, you drafted Shuck. Rattler's a 5th-round pick from last year. He's only in his 2nd year. I don't see how, if they're even, I don't see how Tyler Shuck isn't the answer when that's the guy you hand-picked, and Rattler is from the previous regime.
Yeah, I think the Saints are in a unique position compared to some of these other teams that we've been talking about, the Browns and the Colts, of like, they don't have that immediate hot seat pressure, right?
No, they don't.
This is year one. Like they can afford to lose with whatever quarterback they feel like gives them the best long-term strategy for success here. So like, well, these other two teams, it kind of felt like that's a very common, you got two quarterbacks, you don't have none. We're going to see both Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson this season. We're going to see Joe Flacco and rookies.
Yeah.
Saints feel like a team that they can take their time deciding this, pick one, and then be patient with them for the entire season if they really want to just say, you know what, Tyler Shuck's going to make some mistakes, but we're going to ride this out and let him work through it, or vice versa. Spencer Rattler, he's the comeback kid right now. I mean, I tend to think that second-year player should have been more impressive from the beginning. Like if he's got an extra year of experience. So the fact that he's kind of been behind suggests that Shuck is probably going to be the better option for them. But whoever you want to go with, like, let them work it out. Let them feel it. Unless you feel like they're getting their development ruined by how poorly they're playing, like leave them out there and kind of let them work through the adversity.
And the one thing about the Saints, too, is they've put a lot into their offensive line. They have some decent offensive linemen. And, I mean, if Kelvin Banks, who they drafted in the top 10 this year, if he's ready to go at left tackle right away like that, they have a little bit of a chance to protect a quarterback. And even if, everything isn't perfect on the team, if Olave stays healthy and Shaheed can come back right, and, it's not – he still has Alvin Kamara there. It's not so bleak that, like, a rookie quarterback would be absolutely crushed if he went out there. So I don't see how that would be the case. So I'm with you. I think the Saints are in a position where they can do that and don't have to worry so much about, the win-loss record at the end of the day.
I think for Saints fan, maybe the bigger issue is whether you feel like this is a coaching staff that can develop a quarterback effectively and build up either of these guys to be a long-term option, or is everyone kind of just waiting around for the next big move in the long-term future here? Is they're still trying to just kind of clean up from getting out from under all the salary cap stuff. And they're very much a franchise in major transition right now.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you there, but we're probably going to get an answer on both of these quarterback battles at some point in time during this week. Heck, it could happen, by the time you hear this. You never know with the news cycle in the NFL these days, but either way, as soon as an answer is given, we'll be here to talk about what goes down. That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, Lauren Cox, as we tell you every single episode. Thanks for tuning in, and stay safe out there.